Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex topics, give you those essential insights, basically the shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're taking a really fascinating journey. We're exploring this strategic mind of, well, one of the most influential business leaders out there, Jeff Bezos, the guy behind Amazon.
Yeah, and we've pulled together a ton of material. We've charted his decision-making, through every major phase of Amazon and even what came after. Our mission today, it's really to unpack the core principles, those pivotal choices that built his empire. We're looking not just at what he did, but the philosophy underneath, from the garage startup days right up to leading this global giant and even, shooting for the stars with space travel. Get ready for some real aha moments, I think.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Our story kicks off 1994. Bezos is a well-paid VP at D.E. Shaw & Co., a finance firm. And he's facing this, well, monumental choice, right? Leave this lucrative career, start an online bookstore, Amazon.com, literally from his garage, all driven by this almost prophetic vision he had about the internet just taking off.
It really is fascinating how he made that call. It wasn't just a leap of faith. He used something he called his regret minimization framework.
Okay, can you break that down for us?
Yeah.
What exactly is the regret minimization framework?
Sure. It's basically a mental exercise. You project yourself into the future. For him, it was imagining himself at age 80 looking back. And the core idea is to make choices now that minimize the regrets you'll have then. So for Bezos, the biggest potential regret wasn't, Amazon failing. It was not even trying to grab that internet opportunity. The regret of inaction, he figured, would sting way more than trying and failing.
That's a powerful way to frame big decisions. And it connects directly to his famous bias for action, doesn't it? He wasn't afraid to just go.
Exactly. And what's really key about his bias for action isn't just speed. It's that he saw not acting as the biggest risk, especially when the market's moving so fast. He had this famous saying having 70% of the information is enough to make a call. Waiting for 90% means you're probably too late. It wasn't about being reckless. It was, a calculated bet that the cost of delay was higher than the cost of making a mistake you could, fix later. Oh, a reversible mistake.
So even in that crazy early internet gold rush, he wasn't just throwing darts. He was incredibly strategic about picking that first product.
No, absolutely. He looked at, I think it was around 20 different product categories.
Yeah.
Really methodically. And he landed on books. Why books? Well, a few reasons. They're standardized. A specific book is the same everywhere. Plus, you can offer this huge selection online that a physical store just can't match. And that helped build customer trust right at the start, which was crucial when, people were still pretty wary about buying stuff online.
And wow, did that pay off fast. I mean, get this. Within 30 days of launch, Amazon wasn't just selling in the US. They were shipping to 45 other countries. So it wasn't just about avoiding analysis paralysis. It showed how quick action, combined with that trust from selling books, could just, boom, capture a market.
Yeah, and you see these principles playing out directly in those first steps. He personally took the risk, leaving that cushy VP job in '94, even when his boss advised against it. He specifically cited that regret framework, and he was hands-on. I mean, literally drove across the country to Seattle, bought the domain name, coded the software in his garage. Real startup stuff.
And smart branding, too. Didn't they initially call it something else?
Yeah, cadabra. Like abracadabra. He changed it to Amazon.
Yes.
Better, right? Symbolizes spale, like the river. And practically, it showed up earlier in alphabetical website listings back then.
Huh, clever. And who was he up against then?
Well, obviously, his old employer, D.E. Shaw, representing the safe path he ditched. Then the big traditional booksellers like Barnes & Noble, the incumbents he was aiming to disrupt. And of course, a bunch of other early internet companies all scrambling for a piece of the online pie.
Okay, so let's pull out some lessons here for maybe entrepreneurs listening. First, big one.
Definitely prioritize that long-term regret minimization. Seriously ask yourself, at 80, what will I regret more? Trying this thing, even if it fails, or never trying it at all?
Good one. And second, embrace that bias for action. Don't get stuck waiting for perfection.
Right. Analysis paralysis is real. Sometimes doing something, even if it's not perfect, is way better than doing nothing because you learn and adapt.
Okay, and third.
Even when things are chaotic, like a gold rush, do your homework. That methodical opportunity assessment, like how he chose books, builds a really strong foundation. Don't just chase the shiny object. So if we shift gears a bit into the next phase, what's really interesting is how that initial bias for action then morphed into this laser focus on the customer. This is after they went public in '97. Amazon started diversifying quickly, right? Beyond books into CDs, videos, clothes, electronics, toys, you name it. But Bezos made this really deliberate, counterintuitive choice. He decided not to pour money into a big marketing budget. Instead, he bet everything on word of mouth, fueled purely by making the customer experience amazing. He literally said customer satisfaction was the only thing.
Wow, that's pretty radical, especially for a public company back then.
Hmm.
Seeing customer obsession not just as a nice to have, but as the core competitive advantage over flashy ads. But I mean, was there ever a downside to that intense focus? Maybe hurt profits early on or, put pressure on the teams?
That's a really good question. And yeah,
Yeah.
there was definitely tension there. Short term, absolutely. Wall Street analysts were scratching their heads, wondering why he wasn't focused on quarterly profits. But for Bezos, it was all about the long game. He saw happy customers as this incredibly valuable asset that would pay off way more down the line than hitting some short-term earnings target. He even said he was very comfortable being misunderstood for it. That long-term customer satisfaction trumped everything else.
I can totally see how that would be a differentiator. Customer service became their superpower, really. It drove that sustained market lead. And things like, putting customer reviews right on the page, even the bad ones, that built incredible trust through transparency.
Absolutely. And his actions backed it up consistently. He had this philosophy to charge less, always pushing for efficiency to lower prices for the customer. And he didn't just keep the bias for action for himself, he pushed it down through the company, encouraged employees to, err on the side of action, and that's how things like one-click shopping came about. Somebody tried something.
So at this point, who are the main competitors feeling the heat?
Well, definitely the traditional retailers, your Barnes& and Nobles, who are finding it really hard to pivot online effectively. Also, lots of other e-commerce startups were popping up, but many were stuck in that old mindset spending big on marketing, which Amazon just wasn't doing. They were playing a different game.
Okay, so pulling out the lessons for entrepreneurs from this phase.
Number one, without a doubt, obsess over the customer. Make that experience the absolute most important single thing. It can genuinely be your most powerful, lasting competitive edge. Forget the marketing fluff, just deliver.
Okay, makes sense.
Second, earn your word of mouth. Focus relentlessly on delivering such great value, product, service, whatever, that people have to talk about it. That's the best and cheapest marketing there is.
Right. And the third lesson.
Be ready to be misunderstood. If you have a strong, long-term vision, especially one that prioritizes customers over immediate profits, stick to your guns. Not everyone, especially short-term thinkers, is going to get it right away. Have conviction.
Okay, now things get really intense. The dot-com bubble bursts. I mean, total carnage. So many internet companies just vanished overnight. But Amazon didn't just survive. It actually came out stronger. How on earth did Bezos steer them through that absolute storm?
It came down to what he called his unusually slow-paced business plan and a really distinct financial focus. He prioritized reinvesting revenue, keeping prices rock bottom, and crucially, focusing on free cash flow instead of standard accounting profits. Now, you might think, wait, isn't profit the main goal? But Bezos got that free cash flow, the actual cash left over after running the business, is like oxygen for a fast-growing company. It's the real money you can use to invest, innovate, and weather storms. Not just numbers on a spreadsheet that might be tied up elsewhere. This cash discipline was key to surviving when others, frankly, ran out of money.
So this unwavering commitment to long-term investment, he deliberately held off showing big profits for, over 6 years, just plowing everything back in. And then in 2005, right after the bubble burst, they launched Amazon Prime. That seems incredibly audacious, almost reckless.
It was audacious, and it's a perfect example of making big bets based on judgment, not just spreadsheets. He launched Prime because he knew it would be amazing for customers, even though the initial financial models apparently screamed, terrible idea. Think about it. Analysts thought giving away free 2-day shipping was financial suicide back then. But the payoff was enormous. First, that cash discipline meant they could survive the bust. Second, having cash meant they could keep innovating. And third, Prime. It totally transformed customer loyalty and buying habits. That perceived value was immense.
And you could see this philosophy in action everywhere.
Totally. That aggressive reinvestment, constantly pouring money back into lower prices and better operations, not shareholder payouts. Plus, optimizing that operating cycle, getting paid by customers before they had to pay suppliers. Super smart way to manage cash.
And he kept drilling this message home to shareholders, too.
Yeah, he famously included his original 1997 shareholder letter in every annual report for years, just constantly reinforcing that long-term focus, that commitment to cash flow over short-term earnings.
So during this period, the competitors weren't just other retailers, but also the ghosts of failed .coms like pets.com.
Exactly. Those failures were the backdrop. Plus, the traditional retailers were still struggling. And then
Yeah.
you had the pressure from investors and analysts who just wanted quick profits, the very thing Bezos was resisting.
Okay, critical lessons from navigating that crisis. What's number one?
Optimize for free cash flow. Seriously understand that cash, real cash you can spend, is the lifeblood. It's more important than just reported earnings for long-term health and innovation.
Got it. Second lesson.
Patience. Be willing to delay gratification, those short-term profits, if it means building sustainable long-term growth and market leadership. Building something truly great takes time.
And the third.
Trust your gut, especially when it comes to customers. Have the courage to make bold bets that you know will delight customers, even if the immediate financial models look scary. Sometimes intuition about value creation beats the spreadsheet. Right, so connecting that resilience to the next phase, this is really where Amazon transforms into an innovation engine, moving way beyond just being an online shop. Bezos leads the charge on launching the Kindle e-reader in 2007. I mean, that completely changed how people read.
Yeah, huge. And then maybe even bigger, turning their internal tech infrastructure into Amazon Web Services, AWS, which astonishingly now drives most of Amazon's profit. How did he even conceive of that? Taking an internal cost and turning it into like their biggest moneymaker.
It really points to this idea of inventing on behalf of customers, even when they don't ask for it. Nobody was demanding Kindle or AWS initially, but Bezos saw the potential value. And he also pushed hard for self-service platforms, things like Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP for authors, and Fulfillment by Amazon, FBA for sellers. His thinking was, even well-meaning gatekeepers slow innovation. So instead of Amazon controlling everything, these platforms opened the doors. Suddenly, any author could publish, any small merchant could use Amazon's logistics. It wasn't just about Amazon innovating, it was about enabling thousands, millions of others to innovate on Amazon's platform.
So it wasn't just tweaking things. It was about fundamentally disrupting how books were read, how computing was done, how small businesses sold online. And this idea of distributed innovation seems key to empowering lots of people, not just a central team.
Absolutely. And the benefits were staggering. Kindle and AWS became massive, highly profitable businesses on their own. Plus, those platforms like KDP and FBA created this incredible ecosystem. It was a win-win. More sellers and authors meant more selection for customers, which drew more customers, which attracted more sellers. Powerful network effects.
And it just cemented their lead, right?
Yeah.
Because tech and R&D weren't just departments. They were woven into everything, letting them move way faster than competitors.
Yeah, and they applied specific methods. For Kindle, they used that work backwards process, started with the vision, any book, in under 60 seconds, then figured out the tech to make it happen.
Interesting. And he focused on hiring specific types of people.
Yeah, he talked about hiring missionaries, not mercenaries, people who were passionate about shaking up industries, who understood the old ways, but were driven to build something fundamentally better. And AWS is the classic example of turning an internal tool built for Amazon's own needs into a service they could offer to the world. Genius, really.
So who were they disrupting this time?
Well, Kindle obviously hit traditional book publishers and retailers hard, Barnes & Noble again. AWS challenged the big established IT companies who were slow to embrace that flexible pay-as-you-go cloud model. And of course, other electronics companies making e-readers or tablets were now competing directly with Kindle.
Okay, distilling the lessons from this innovation explosion first.
Work backwards. Start with the customer need, the ideal experience, and then build whatever it takes to deliver that, even if it means learning totally new things.
Second lesson.
Empower others through platforms. Don't try to do everything yourself. Creating self-service tools can unleash way more innovation and growth than you could ever manage centrally. Build an ecosystem.
And third.
Weave R&D into the fabric of your company. Tech and innovation need to be everywhere, in every team, not just locked away in a lab. That's how you stay ahead.
So Amazon becomes this behemoth. And Bezos gets famously obsessed with avoiding what he called day two, which he described as stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating painful decline, followed by death.
Pretty bleak. How did he fight that, especially as the company got so huge?
It is bleak, and it shows how seriously he took the risk of corporate complacency. He fought it relentlessly by embedding the day one culture deep into the company. Think of it as trying to keep the energy, the speed, the customer obsession of a startup, even when you have hundreds of thousands of employees. A constant battle against bureaucracy. A huge part of that was embracing, even celebrating, experimental failure.
Celebrating failure. That sounds counterintuitive. How do you actually do that?
Well, he famously said, if you know in advance that it's going to work, it's not an experiment. He framed failure not as a mistake, but as a necessary byproduct of invention. You have to try things that might not work to find the things that do. And to keep things moving fast, he introduced and really pushed the one-way, two-way door framework for decisions. Right, the doors. Could you refresh us on how that works?
Sure. Super simple, but powerful. One-way doors are big, consequential, hard-to-reverse decisions, like building a giant fulfillment center. Those need slow, careful deliberation. But most decisions, he argued, are two-way doors. They're reversible. If you make a mistake, you can back out, change course. Those decisions should be made quickly, often by small, empowered teams. Don't let reversible choices get bogged down in bureaucracy.
That makes a ton of sense, and the benefits seem obvious. They could keep innovating at scale because failures were treated as learning fuel.
Yeah.
I mean, the Fire phones were a public flop, right? But the lessons learned directly fed into the success of Echo and Alexa.
Exactly. And that framework, plus things like the famous two pizza teams, kept them surprisingly agile for such a large company.
Two pizza teams.
Yeah, the rule that teams should be small enough that you could feed them with two pizzas. It forces autonomy, clear ownership, and faster communication. So the applications were concrete. Implement those small teams, rigorously use the one-way, two-way door framework, and genuinely learn from missteps like the Fire phone, which Bezos publicly called a necessary failure.
Who were the competitors in this fight against Day 2? Was
Yeah.
it just internal bureaucracy?
In a way, yes. The main competitor was that internal drift towards slowness and risk aversion that kills so many big companies. Think Blockbuster, Sears examples of Day 2. But of course, they also had direct competitors in new areas, like Google with Google Home against Amazon Echo, or Apple with Apple TV versus Fire TV.
Okay, lessons from fighting off Day 2. What's the first big takeaway?
Actively, consciously fight complacency. You have to build mechanisms, cultural, operational, specifically designed to keep that day one energy alive and avoid stagnation. It doesn't happen automatically. Empower speed through decentralization. Push decisions down. Use frameworks like the two-way door to let teams move fast on reversible choices. Velocity matters.
And the third, maybe the hardest one.
Reframe failure. Treat it not as something to be punished, but as a tuition payment for innovation. It's a necessary cost of inventing, and potentially a huge competitive advantage if you learn faster than others. So that raises a really interesting question. How does a company that big, that focused on its core, start making big moves way outside of it? This next period shows Bezos really broadening his scope. I mean, Amazon buys Whole Foods in 2017 for nearly $14 billion. Suddenly, they're a major player in physical grocery stores. Huge leap.
Yeah, massive. And outside Amazon, Bezos himself buys the Washington Post back in 2013, a personal purchase, leading its digital turnaround. Plus, he starts launching these enormous philanthropic efforts, the Day One Fund in 2018, the $10 billion Earth Fund in 2020. And maybe partly due to public pressure, Amazon raises its minimum wage significantly in the U.S. in 2018.
You see a pattern here. Proactive diversification into adjacent areas where Amazon's strengths, logistics, tech, customer data could apply. Think Whole Foods, or even the tech infusion at the Post. And also using his personal wealth for broader influence beyond just Amazon's bottom line, philanthropy, media ownership. And that wage increase shows a certain responsiveness, a pragmatic understanding that addressing public and employee concerns is important for a company of that scale and visibility.
The benefits were pretty clear, right? Whole Foods gave them instant scale in grocery, which they could then hook into Prime delivery. His investment turned the Washington Post around, making it profitable again and boosting its digital presence in journalism. And the philanthropy, plus addressing wages, definitely helped polish Amazon's public image, showing a broader sense of responsibility.
Absolutely. And the applications are smart. Whole Foods wasn't just bought, it was integrated, using it for supply chain advantages, faster delivery options. At the Post, he didn't just write checks. He brought in Amazon's tech-first, customer-centric thinking, massively boosting their tech team. And the philanthropy wasn't random, it was structured, large-scale funding aimed at tackling huge problems systematically.
Competitors in these new arenas.
Definitely the big grocery chains like Walmart and Kroger, who quickly had to step up their own delivery games. In media, other legacy newspapers struggling with the digital shift. And in philanthropy, well, other major foundations and philanthropists working on similar global challenges.
Okay, lessons for leaders looking beyond their core business.
First, diversify proactively, but look for strategic fit. Where can your existing strengths give you an edge in a new market? Don't just diversify for diversification's sake.
Second, As you grow, embrace social responsibility. It's not just about PR. Proactively addressing societal issues becomes crucial for your brand, reputation, and long-term sustainability.
Yeah. And third, personal investments can have huge ripple effects. Using your own capital outside your main business can extend your influence and even reshape other industries.
Okay, so that brings us pretty much up to the present and looking forward. Bezos took another huge step recently, stepping back from the day-to-day at Amazon. What's that about?
It's a massive shift. In 2021, he moved from CEO to executive chairman. Why? Explicitly to spend more time on Blue Origin, his space company he actually started way back in 2000.
Hmm.
Blue Origin isn't just a hobby. It has this incredibly ambitious goal: make space travel common and eventually enable humanity to live off Earth, maybe in free-floating space colonies. This decision itself is a powerful sign, strategically allocating his time, his most precious resource, to this lifelong passion and incredibly grand vision for humanity's future.
Definitely sounds like that go big or go home approach again. But on a cosmic scale, he wants to make history with Blue Origin. How's he tackling something that complex?
He's doing what worked at Amazon, infusing proven methods. He's bringing in Amazon's intense, results-driven culture, even poaching top Amazon executives to really accelerate Blue Origin's pace and make it more competitive in the private space race. So the benefit he's aiming for is clear: speed up space development through direct focus and that hard-driving Amazon culture.
And the potential impact is just immense.
Ugh.
Addressing resource limits on Earth by expanding into space. Plus, that sheer ambition, backed by his own billions from selling Amazon stock, keeps attracting top engineering talent.
You see it in their motto: gradatim for us cider, step by step,
Yeah.
preciously. Patient, methodical engineering, but with aggressive goals. And he's put his money and his people where his mouth is, appointing former Amazon execs like Dave Limp as CEO, bringing in that operational rigor.
And just continuing to sell billions in Amazon stock to fund it personally, that's commitment. Who's the main competition in space?
Well, the elephant in the room is SpaceX, obviously. Elon Musk's company is the direct, formidable rival, but also established players like ULA, Northrop Grumman, and even government agencies like NASA, who Blue Origin partners with sometimes, but also competes against for contracts.
Okay, final set of lessons. This time, maybe for those with truly long-term, almost generational ambitions.
First, pursue those grand passions, but do it with discipline. If you have a deep, long-term goal, be willing to strategically allocate your resources, even stepping back from other successes to make it happen.
Second, don't reinvent the wheel entirely. Transfer what works. Proven culture, proven practices from one success can absolutely be transplanted to accelerate a new venture, even in a totally different field.
And third, be ready for the spotlight. If you have world-changing ambitions, expect intense scrutiny, public, ethical, political. You need a clear why and the ability to articulate it persuasively.
Wow, what an incredible arc. We've gone from a garage bookstore built on regret minimization, through relentless customer focus, surviving crises with cash flow discipline, explosive innovation with Kindle and AWS, fighting day-two bureaucracy, diversifying widely, and now aiming for the stars. His willingness to invent for customers, treat failure as fuel, and constantly push against the status quo. It's just woven through everything.
It really underscores how that combination of strategic foresight, unwavering long-term vision, and operational rigor can build something truly massive, something that might even, as he hopes, make history.
So maybe the final thought to leave everyone with is this. Think about that tension in Bezos' approach, the absolute iron conviction in his long-term goals, side by side with his total willingness to learn from stumbles, from failures along the path. How does that mix of, unshakable vision and flexible adaptation challenge how you think about making your own big decisions? What's the next one-way door decision you might be facing? And how can you tackle it with maybe a bit more of that relentless, customer-obsessed, day-one mindset we've talked about today? Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex topics, give you those essential insights, basically the shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're taking a really fascinating journey. We're exploring this strategic mind of, one of the most influential business leaders out there, Jeff Bezos, the guy behind Amazon.
Yeah, and we've pulled together a ton of material. We've charted his decision-making, through every major phase of Amazon and even what came after. Our mission today, it's really to unpack the core principles, those pivotal choices that built his empire. We're looking not just at what he did, but the philosophy underneath, from the garage startup days right up to leading this global giant and even, shooting for the stars with space travel. Get ready for some some real aha moments, I think.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Our story kicks off 1994. Bezos is a well-paid VP at D.E. Shaw & Co., a finance firm. And he's facing this, well, monumental choice, right? Leave this lucrative career, start an online bookstore, Amazon.com, literally from his garage, all driven by this, like, almost prophetic vision he had about the internet just taking off.
It really is fascinating how he made that call. It wasn't just a leap of faith. He used something he called his regret minimization framework.
Okay, can you break that down for us?
Yeah.
What exactly is the regret minimization framework?
Sure. It's basically a mental exercise. You project yourself into the future. For him, it was